Rain is a good thing, at least according to Luke Bryan. If you're in the dirt world at all, rain, it can be your friend and it can also be your enemy. When it's real dry, we want it for dust control. And of course, at the end of the job site, when we're trying to get things to grow, it's very helpful. But most of the time, we just kind of wish that the rain would stay away. But it's inevitable. It's part of every job. It's part of life. It is what it is. We just got to be prepared for rain. We got to especially be prepared for the heavy downpours that we get from time to time. These storms can really mess up our job site. They can create washouts. They can create big issues. And they can also potentially get us in trouble with DEP or the Conservation District or even the state sometimes. With a few simple steps, a few simple procedures that you just go over every day, you can prevent these issues. Nobody likes getting fined. Nobody really likes the Conservation District or the DEP necessarily, but at the end of the day, they're still in their job. They're trying to protect people. They're trying to protect the environment. And if you think about it, if everybody just goes about jobs the way they want to, does things how they want to, we'd have quite a mess. We'd have pollution everywhere. We'd have things being disturbed. They need to establish some sort of control, some ground rules. So I definitely understand it. And that's where the fines come in. If you break the rules, if you don't do what you're supposed to, you can potentially get some huge fines. And of course, that can definitely kill momentum. And that can also kind of hurt your pocket, hurt your bank account. We don't want that happening. But by following a few simple steps, procedures, this can be avoided pretty easily. Hey, this is Chad with Excavation and Revelation, the place where you can come and turn to for excavating tips and tactics, and where I reveal procedures that are proven to help you and to be beneficial to your excavating business. After any big rain over the evening or overnight, one of the first things you want to do the next morning on your job site is check out how bad the sediment is and how bad things get washed out. You want to start out by checking your rock construction entrance, like behind me. Because before you know it, trucks are going to be coming in and out, and if they're picking up mud or leaving, it's going to be creating a mess. You want to make sure it's always good in place. This one, for example, could use roughed up a little bit. The stone kind of freshened up. It's so packed in right now, it's not really going to do its job getting mud off the tires. You want to, of course, make sure that no sediment or water has left the site. And if any has, you want to get that cleaned up as soon as possible. You then want to go over your site, check out your erosion control, whether you have silt fence or silt sock. This silt sock, for example, is not really doing a whole lot right there. There's a whole bunch of sediment behind it, which is not good. That needs cleaned up. There is an earth berm here holding a lot of this back, so that's okay. Over here, around this inlet, they've got some silt sock. But you definitely want to get all material off that silt sock to make sure it's functioning to its max capacity. Usually you can get away with a berm like this. There is silt sock on the other side of it, so the berm is actually doing a lot of the grunt work, collecting any runoff or spoil that runs down over the slope. You then want to look at the site and any low spots, any puddles, you want to make sure that they're taken care of, because the more that they accumulate with water, the more saturated the ground's going to get. You want to make sure that that is alleviated. Things actually look pretty decent. You always want to try to keep things accessible, such as if you're taking out roots or stumps or logs, you're going to be able to make sure you can get them without getting in too much mud. The more that you have the site sealed off, rolled in, compacted, a smooth drum roller is ideal, such as over there, the better off you'll be. The more the water will shut off the site and not absorb into the ground and get too muddy. But also, with that being said, the more runoff that's created you got to really watch for areas that it's concentrated on, such as it's all funneled down to this entrance here. So that's why it's a very key area to make sure that it is checked out and maintained. It only takes a few minutes each and every morning to go over your site and go over things, but you definitely want to get all sediment and any runoff under control sooner than later. You never know who's going to be popping in throughout the day, and ultimately you can get in trouble. So you can tell water definitely funnels down here. It creates kind of a little gully. That's fine as long as it's not going out on the road. It all kind of comes down to this one area that we talked about earlier. So you want to definitely concentrate here and get this sediment cleaned up. Get it somewhere up on site, get it secured, get any washouts filled in so that they're not going to be a big eyesore or leading to some questions about some things. The more proactive you are about these little items, the cleaning up your job site, keeping things intact, keeping runoff and water and sediment contained to the site, the less likely you are to get noticed, or the less likely you are ultimately to get in trouble. We all want to do our part to make sure that the environment is protected, that we're not destroying other people's property, that we're not contaminating water sources for fish habitat, for drinking purposes, whatever the case. It's never good. You never want to contaminate water. And they definitely crack down hard on that. So always do your best, especially after a hard rainstorm, first thing in the morning the next day, to make sure that things are contained. It doesn't take very long, but it's so important. Like I said, for example, your rock construction entrances, you want to make sure they're fresh. This one needs to be lengthened a little bit, freshened up, get the stone a little bit loose. It's just getting too packed in. The reason for the rocks are to keep the tires clean as they leave. They're not going to be perfectly clean, but those rocks are going to make the truck bounce a little bit. It's going to knock off some mud. It's going to catch the mud. You want big rocks too that aren't going to get stuck to your tires. If you do this with a 2B or a 1B or a smaller stone, the mud that's sticking to your tires, it's just going to collect all that small stone. It's just going to carry up the road and make a real big mess. You want to make sure that you're using about the size of a fist. It's usually a number 4 stone for your rock construction entrance. Make sure it's nice and thick and that you don't have much soil or sediment mixed in with it. You want to make sure it's clean. That is the whole purpose of this. Usually 50 feet is the length, at least, that they want for these. And make them wide enough that the trucks have a little bit of room each way to go. They're not creating ruts. They've got a little wiggle room. It's a simple step that most people overlook, most places overlook. You can get in some trouble by not keeping them maintained or not installing them properly. This is a picture from a job site that I was on years ago that I took that really shows what a big storm can do and how much dirt and sediment and silt it can move in a short period of time. Now, I did not get in trouble on this site because I was able to get it cleaned up before people noticed, but it definitely could have been bad had the wrong people come and saw this before I got it cleaned up too well. Now in this case, I used hay bales because I knew there was going to be some heavy rains in this area, but hay bales, silt sock, silt fence, they all work in different ways. They've all kind of got their time and purpose. Sometimes it's easier whatever you have available. In this case, we had hay bales available, so I just used them. And they stopped a lot of the sediment, as you can see, but they didn't stop all of it. I did have to spend quite a bit of time then getting that sediment that's underneath the hay bales by the road cleaned up, scraped up, and back up top. Here's another quick picture of some sediment control, silt sock, and hay bales in this situation. You can kind of see where the silt was at one point up on the silt sock. Then I got it cleaned off of there and cleaned up a little bit. This final picture is from an actual sediment pond. Now, of course, not every job is going to have a sediment pond. It's mainly the bigger jobs, but they can be a good practice even if it's a smaller job site. If you have to funnel water to one area, you can dig a little sump, a little swale, get that sediment collected. You got to get it cleaned out though before it gets too big or too overrun. This was actually at a stone quarry, and it was neglected for quite a long time, so it took a while to get this cleaned out. I had to use a Cat 326 with a super stick to get in there and reach to get cleaned out properly. But it's just an example of an erosion control method that you can use. So to recap, always be prepared for the unexpected. Have your rock construction entrance ready and always make sure it's clean. Have your erosion control methods in place, silt sock, silt fence, hay bales, etc. And if necessary, put in a sediment pond or a little sump hole to collect the sediment.